thank you very much for joining me on Headstrong.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Bright and early on a Monday morning.
That's how it's got to be.
Got to start the week well. Right, it's been a couple of months. We're kind of towards the end of the summer since your first professional defeat,
Yep.
which, you know, is a good amount of time, I suppose, as well, for us to kind of be having a good chat about where you are. And it's been nice to also have a very brief chat before we started about where you are in terms of mindset and stuff. Defeat in any sport is tough mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you at the moment?
I'm in a really good place. I think I didn't dwell on it too much. And I feel like my saying is trust the process. And I'm a big advocate for that. And I knew that when that happened, it was for a reason. And I'm yet to find out what that reason is in time. But I know that my story and my journey is onto bigger things. And I feel like for me to do what I want to do in this life, which is to give back, to do talks and to kind of help people kind of find what they want to do in life, help find their purpose. By telling my story, I feel like that loss and that defeat will add to that way of talking to people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, by the sounds of things, do you feel like you have your script or narrative kind of already predetermined? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether that loss was for me to understand myself more as an individual, as an athlete, as a woman, and just life and more my mindset. I feel like since lockdown is when I really did work on my mindset, and it is just getting better and better. And maybe that was a test for me to see how can I deal with that in the correct way. And I feel like I'm doing that.
Okay, so off that then, how do you switch your mindset from that initial defeat? And I know that you said that it wasn't, as you say, it wasn't a battery, it was a split decision. And ultimately there was controversy around that. But ultimately the result is a result. But how do you switch from the mindset of defeat to growth?
I switched from the defeat to growth with understanding myself and how am I viewing that? It's a perspective that I've put on that. And I feel like I've put a positive perspective on that defeat, which has helped me grow already as an individual and as an athlete towards the next stage. I know where I went wrong and I'm very self-aware and I take accountability. And I did that on my own and then spoke to others around me about that. But it just leads to bigger and better things for me. And I know that and I trust in that. Yeah,
that's really, really great to think of it like that. What about when one experiences a loss, is it important to reflect on the fight? How much do you look back on the actual performance of things? Do you reflect on it like that? Or is it actually, right, let's get up, let's get back to the gym, let's work hard, work on our mindset, work on, you know, those little areas. But do you reflect on things or is it actually, let's move forward?
Yeah, no, I do reflect. I do a lot of journaling, writing, listen to podcasts, things like that. And I watched the fight as soon as I got back from the area that it was in. So I watched it straight away and I knew I had to get it over and done with. So then I can kind of have my time to process the loss rather than process, watch it and go back into a negative mindset. I thought whilst I was already in a negative space, watch it negatively. And then when I have processed it to where I am now, I can rewatch it, which I'm meant to do this coming week with my coach. And then I know I will be in a good headspace to analyze it, to watch it and see where I went wrong.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You clearly are very good with kind of self-criticism. You've worked a lot on yourself. What about public criticism then? Because when a loss happens, regardless, in any sport, there are going to be critics because it's going to be subjective, but also from members of the public as well. How do you deal with like excess noise, loud noise? Because there can also be positive as well.
Yeah, of course. I think with this loss though, there was not much negative.
Yeah.
There was nothing but love and support. And that for me, again, another reason of why I believe that defeat needed to happen was to understand and know my self-worth, my self-belief, and know that I am having an impact on others, which sometimes when you're in yourself, I don't view myself how someone else will view me on the outside. So when there was about 20 or 30 girls that come up to me afterwards, screaming my name, found me in the hotel, wanted signatures, and then even the comments, I don't always tend to look at the comments, but when I did have a flick through, it was positive.
Yeah, you never know what to expect, right?
Yeah, there was some negative.
That apprehension. Yeah, but I think, you know, as I said, it will happen in any area, and it's so easy for someone sat behind a screen to say it. Because I actually said this to someone the other day. Would they ever say it to your face? You know, exactly. It's amazing how easy it is to, you know, chuck a, you know, nasty comment or just something that's just so unnecessary.
Yeah, I think for me, the more negatives were more the ring walk.
Yeah.
But I feel like for me, I'm like, it's the entertainment business and boxing is a business at the end of the day. And it is about getting eyes on you in the sport and you being a promoter for yourself, as well as, for example, Eddie Hearn promoting my career. And I love that sort of stuff. And I'm like, for me, my outfits, my ring walk, my music, that makes Shannon Ryan. That's my brand. And I did see some negative comments on there, but I thought, I got one career and I don't want to get to the end of my career and then do a great ring walk that I love and have one of them. I'd rather do it all like that and then look back at my career and be like, wow, I did that.
And also, you don't want to have regrets. You want to be true to yourself and what you want.
Yeah, and I want to enjoy it at the same time as taking it seriously.
Yeah, and I always think about these people that leave these comments. They don't know you.
No.
You know, they know, you know, the one-dimensional side of things right now, what they are seeing. But there's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah, of course.
Right? What about then? You mentioned there that lasting impact, even after a shock loss, but the impact that you're having on, you know, young women, teenagers, and particularly individuals looking to get into sport. So what's that like, having, you know, you've built a platform yourself, you've got a number of people that look up to you. What's that like?
It's
Is it daunting?
It is, but it's also very motivating. And that's why I'm like, I do it for myself for sure, but there's so many younger people out there or even older people that I am having an impact on that makes you think like, okay, cool, that's happened, but you get back in the gym because this next fight is going to impact these people again and other people and more people. So it is very motivating and it's like, it's exhilarating. It gives me chills. It makes me emotional and I'm an emotional person and I thrive off emotion. So it's when I am in those feelings or feeling a certain feeling that makes me want to just keep doing better and strive for more.
Is there anything or anyone, an interaction that comes to mind that's been the most impactful on you?
I think the recent one would have been the girls that come up to me in the arena, but it wasn't just the arena. I signed some signatures after the fight and they were all hugging me, these young girls. And then it was, they all come to find me to get more pictures and things like that. And it was all in a huddle and then screaming my name in the hotel. And I think that for me was a moment I realised that what I'm doing does have an impact because I wasn't as aware. I see little glimpses here and there, but I think that was the most impactful. That made me in tears and made me think there is a bigger reason to what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's more than a belt. It's more than the money. It's like I'm making a difference to hopefully getting these people into sport, understanding what it is to be in, you know, that kind of environment, doing whatever it is, whatever your motivation to be in the sport is, be that exercise, be that staying out of trouble, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I feel like it's more than boxing for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What about your relationship then online with social media? You touched on it with, you know, every now and then look at the comments, but do you, I suppose, treat that as a tool? Because as you say, boxing is a business and Shannon Ryan is a person, but there's the brand.
To not look at them as a...
No, as in, do you use social media as a tool or is it, you know, you want to showcase you and your life, but there's also so much that you do want to show, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like I've got a good balance with that. I think people on my social media are interested in Shannon Ryan as an individual and Shannon Ryan as an athlete. So I try and show both sides. But what I used to think, in all honesty, was when I was showing Shannon Ryan the individual, that I wouldn't be taken seriously as Shannon Ryan the boxer. Whereas I know where I am now as an athlete and in my boxing career, and I know, like, other people's opinion, that doesn't worry me or impact me anymore. So I know that I can show the individual and the athlete and not worry about being taken seriously or not, because I feel like I've proven myself to the world and boxing world that I am to be taken seriously. I just enjoy what I do.
Where did that anxiety come from? You know, because not wanting to show that personal side, was it out of fear? Or?
I think so. I didn't grow up boxing. So I think boxing for me was a new sport and a new world. So it was, how do I navigate myself in this new world? And that's how it felt. And it felt like every time I was doing something was to prove to the people that I do belong here. And then, you know, I was with Sky Sports to begin with Ben Shalom, and then boxer. And then obviously now I'm with Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing. And I feel like the steps that I've taken to get to where I am, nothing's been given to me. It's all been worked for. And I think that's enough for me to prove, like that proves enough. And I've cemented that within myself. So when I do look back, I'm like, again, it's that part of, I don't want to get to the end of my career and wish I did X, Y, Z. You know, I'm 27 now. I don't want to be, when I reach 40, look back at everything and be like, I wish I did this, or I wish I showed this, or, you know. So
luckily, 27, you've still got plenty of years in the ring.
It's going quick.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's true. It does, I'm sure. But what does a typical day then look like in the life of a boxer? Because there's so much work that goes into, ultimately, a very short amount of time that is seen by the public. So what does a kind of a day look like?
Yeah, so if we look at, for example, a Thursday, that would be my S&C, my weights and conditioning at 9 a.m. I would then go get to my house for about 12:30, have a shower, have my protein shake and some lunch, and then I would just chill for a little bit. And then my boxing might be, for example, 4 p.m. Go to the boxing gym, come home, shower, have my dinner, journal, read, just something of that sort to get my mind right. And then the same again the next day. But the following day for me would be sparring and then a run, for example. So each day is different, but every day is twice a day, Monday to Saturday.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I do it twice a day.
It's hard work. And as the weeks go on, obviously it gets harder.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it's tiring, but it's very rewarding. So I think that helps.
Absolutely. What are the biggest misconceptions of the life of a boxer that people talk about, particularly someone at your level? Are there any misconceptions?
Yeah, I think it's, you've got your whole day and you're just training, but it's not that simple. There's so much that goes into the training, and you're putting your body through so much exhaustion for 8 to 10 weeks continuously with, a day off at the end of the week. So it's also when you're boxing as well, depending on who you are, you may have outside commitments that intertwine with the boxing. And I feel like for myself, I do have other things that go on, whether that's shoots for sponsors or podcasts or things like that you have to attend. One, because I want to, but two, it's branding and it helps promote yourself. Yeah. So there's a lot that you've got to put into it. And I just don't think people really understand that.
No. I think, well, it's a different job. It's not a 9 to 5 to the office that, let's be honest, 90% of the population probably are familiar with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, also with what I do, people are probably like, okay, that's a bit random, but that's how it is. Mm-hmm. What about, so you've talked about the physical side of training, and that's immense, and of course it is, but in a sport like boxing, an individual sport, and I know team sports also will be training the mind, but a lot of it will be having that mental fortitude. So what do you do, and what have you done? How's it grown over the years in terms of training your mind and mindset?
I think for me, back in around 2020 was when I did start journaling a lot more, started to get my thoughts down. And then for me, it is about manifesting and law of attraction. And that's what I kind of looked more into. And I feel like if I was to get my journals out and show you, it'd be like, wow, because everything in my life now, I wrote it down and it's here. And, when I say that to people, they can't grasp it, but it's not just about writing it down. You have to take the action. And I feel like when I have looked into it, it is about the feeling of it as well. So if you want something, you write it, but you've got to feel it and you've got to know that it's here. And that's what I've done. So the trust the process part come because when I look back on my journey, everything makes sense. Everything is pieced together. And I'm like, okay, that happened because of this and that happened because of that. So I just read it. Everything that I do, I just trust it and I feel it. And that helps with my mindset with anything that I do. And, I try and spread that to others as much as I can, without people saying it's different. I can't grasp it. It's a different language. But everyone's different and people have got their own concept of it. But for me, I just believe it. And I feel like I'm a walking person for it, basically. Yeah.
Well, with manifesting though as well, it's not like you're writing it down, saying you're going to do it and then not training and not working hard. Because then, as you say, you trust the process. It's almost like you're setting yourself a goal, but you know you're going to achieve it, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. And then you actually put in the hard work because you're not on the sofa just...
Yeah, so you got to take the action and do the work for sure.
Yeah, exactly. What about in boxing as a sport then, with it being so individual? Do you ever experience times of loneliness? I know that there are trainers and you have teams, you've got Matchroom, you've got your agency, and there are always people around you. But when it comes down to it, it is you.
Yeah.
So do you experience that?
No, I do. It's very hard. I feel like I've got so much support and love around me, people that care about me and things like that, which I know, and it's amazing. But it is just you. It is just me driving to the gym. Yes, my coach is there, and he does a great job, but it's me in that ring. It's me that then has to drive home when I'm tired, cry on the way home, have some dinner. Then I've got to go get myself ready for this run, and then come home, have a shower, and it happens again the next day. So it's like when people say to me, like, who motivates you? And I always say, like, myself, but that's not in like a cliche way or anything like that. It is because it's me that's getting me to that place. And when it is so tough, that's what motivates me, is I'm like, my mindset is so strong to get me out of, you know, sometimes these places in my mind that are tough, and I still go out and give 150%.
Yeah, you've got to, ultimately you are on your own a lot of the time, as you say. And so just having that power of strength is so important. How about boxing as an entity then? I know that there have been people who are vocal, talking about mental health, well-being, mindset, and the significance of it. But there is that side of reluctance to show vulnerability because it looks like a weakness, right? So what do you think that it looks like in boxing at the moment? And do you think that more could be done?
Yeah, I think in boxing, it's not that spoken about. But who I do want to touch on is I watched Simone Biles' documentary and I was in floods of tears because for me, we did very different of our careers. But for me, it was very relatable in a lot of things that she was saying. And now I'm obsessed with her. And I think in certain sports, people are speaking out. I think there was a swimmer that said about mental health as well. But I feel like
Adam Petrie.
Yes. I think, but in the boxing industry, it's not quite there yet. And people do look at vulnerability as a weakness, but I don't know if maybe it's because it's a fighting sport and we don't want, or people don't want, you know, other people to see what they're going through or what they want to talk about. But I do think as time goes on, the mental health aspect is going to become and is becoming a priority. Because I, for sure, like I said, I watched that documentary and I was wowed.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's so raw, and it's amazing to see that on a global platform. And even after her missing the last Olympics to then the immense success of this one, all that also just goes to show the immense mental resilience. And
just how she just talks about, you know, therapy and things like that. And I think there's nothing, but me personally, I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think there's nothing wrong with sharing it. And even in the boxing world, what you say, yes, might become a weakness to your, or show that to your opponent, because you don't know who's watching you online. They could be on another thing. But at the same time, the fight's the fight. You know, you're training for the fight, not what you're talking about. And I just think as boxers, we're in the professional world. So it is other people are looking at us and how can we relate and help others? And again, that's what I'm an advocate for.
With boxing though, if one was to talk about therapy, that's, yes, you're showing vulnerability in that area, but what you're doing is working on growth.
Yeah.
You know, because all that's going to do is build resilience, mental fortitude. And so actually, it's not that, it's a matter of perspective, really.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. What about then women's boxing? Because it's grown enormously in, I mean, the last decade, but even more so since COVID. Do you feel that you receive the same respect as your male counterparts in the boxing world? Or is there, what work can be done to grow this?
No, we don't get the same respect, but I kind of understand. You know, there's still people now that are like, I don't watch women's boxing, but I watched XYZ and now I'm a fan of it. So I think it is just where boxing was just a male-dominated sport for so long. And again, there's so many women in the sport, but some there's not that aggression and there's not that fight. People, and yes, boxing is hit and don't get hit and things like that, but sometimes there's not that much going on. There's 2 minutes. It's kind of fast-paced. You know, that's why some people are wanting 3 minutes, just so there could be more going on within that fight. Do I think it will get the respect? I do think in time. But yeah, as of now, it's not as respected, but it is still growing.
So what can be done, do you think? I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous because it's like, well, do this, this, and this, but it's actually what's realistic in the kind of coming years that can be done to help kind of improve that and bring the equality kind of.
I think one of the things maybe getting more female fights on the cards. But I just don't know how that works in terms of the business side. But yeah, that's all I can think of right now. Just more people shouting about it, more promo on women's boxing, maybe. Sure. Yeah, I just think more promo, more fights. But again, it depends on what the people want to see that works for the promoters.
For sure. I bet, more and more people are becoming interested, which is great, and long may it continue. Boxing, though, has not always been your combat sport. And you've started, a different sport from an earlier age. I'm curious, how did you get into combat sport as a kid?
I've always said I didn't have a choice, which I'm very grateful for. At 5 years old, my dad, he done taekwondo to begin with, but then he opened up his own kickboxing gym. So I started off kickboxing from 5 years old, but kickboxing is quite vast. There's more than just one style. So I didn't do the full contact. I done the sport karate, which is tapping. So there was no full contact and it was semi-contact. And I did that up until 19 years old. Traveled the world, which was great. Finished world number 1 when I ended my career. But then that sport, it's not in the Olympics and you can't make a career from it. So that's when I went on to the GB Taekwondo team and I was potentially training for the Tokyo Olympics. But I was there 9 months, had a serious hip injury, and then I got taken off of the team, sent back home. And then that's when I started working at O2 as I needed a job. But then I thought, I just felt for me and my life, sport is where I want to be. And I had to think of what sport will take me to where I want to go. And I did do MMA for 1 session, hated it. Yeah. And then I found boxing back in 2018.
That was such a quick crash course in everything. So when you were growing up, particularly with your dad's gym, I imagine you were there just a lot.
To be fair, we was in terms of when we was younger, my mum would obviously look after us and she does the admin side of it. So we would have to go to the gym just to watch because no one was to look after us. But we only trained on a Wednesday and a Friday and a Saturday, but was around it pretty much every day. And that's how it was for many years. So it was more when I went into the Taekwondo is when I was used to 3 times a day, Monday to Friday. And that was tough. And that was tough on my mental health at that time because there was no introduction to it. So I've gone from training twice a week to then training 3 times a day, hence the injury that I...
For sure. Going from that transition of ultimately what was probably, amateur to then getting on board with Team GB, as you say, training 3 times a day, pressures rise. Your body's on the, is pushed more to the extreme. Again, your mindset is working hard. What was that transition like? How did you find it?
It was hard. It was hard because I had to move away as well. I moved to Manchester. Well, I applied for university and I went for 7 days because I needed to go there before I got accepted. And then obviously the 7th day I got accepted. So that's when I moved up to Manchester. And that was my first time living away from home. And back then at 19, I wasn't ready to move out. So I had to kind of deal with that being away from my family. Plus also dealing with not having enough money to even get home. On the weekends, I would drive every weekend home and then drive back from Manchester to
every weekend. Really?
Occasionally I'd stay up there depending on what's going on, but pretty much every weekend I'd drive home just for that comfort. But that was hard, putting your body through that and you think, can I do this? And that's why when I was transitioning into, boxing on that side, I was thinking that was so hard. Can I do that again? But obviously I managed to do that. And
was training when you made that move to uni kind of a way of almost kind of working on yourself in terms of mindset and distracting yourself and saying, okay, I can do this because I talk to people about loneliness and the thing that exacerbates it even more is the moping side of it, right? It's getting in your own head, thinking about it too much. So getting out there and training, was that a good through line and consistent thing to be doing?
Yeah, it was definitely, for me, training is an outlet. It helps me feel sane and calm, relaxed. And I even find now, if I take 4 days, 5 days off, I do feel myself dipping back into a space where I don't want to be. And I feel like once I hit back in the gym, you forget everything. And then for a certain amount of days, you're good. And then obviously if you take time off, you'll dip again. So I feel like I've been like that for all of my life. And I can never pinpoint what that is, where I'm dipping to. I've never been able to pinpoint that. And I feel like I'm yet to find out, which I'm quite excited about, to know where that sort of emotional pain comes from, and why I need to get back in the gym to feel good. So I'm yet to figure that out as well, which is a nice new journey that's about to happen.
Yeah. You've mentioned somebody who might be one now, but when you were growing up, did you have any role models or people you looked up to?
Yeah, it was more one, my dad, because of, you know, what he did in his sport and then kickboxing, but also Michael Page as well. I feel like, don't know if you know MMA, the UFC now, but he's like a brother to me, but he did kickboxing as well. And then he went on to do MMA, and then now he's been signed to the UFC. And I just think when I look at that journey, it is similar in terms of what I've done, kickboxing, GB, and then boxing. And I just feel like he's knocked down the doors. And I feel like on my side, I do the same. And yeah, I just feel like as a sort of like a family member, it's nice to see that and know that my path is different, but it's very similar.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you were growing up, did you, and do you kind of relate to heritage? And is heritage something that you talk about as a family? And is that an important thing that you discuss?
Yeah, not so much. Not so much. I feel like my household is very sport-driven, focused. So yeah, I feel like heritage-wise and culture-wise, I don't feel like I'm as cultured just because everything has just been sport, goals, career, which is sad. Like, I do think about that, and for me it's quite sad, but at the same time, again, I am where I am for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. We've obviously just witnessed the Olympics, which is fantastic, and you touched on it. You were part of Team GB, and that changes the setups, right? And you went to the Commonwealth Games. Is that right?
No, I was training for that.
Training for that, and you didn't make it. So when you're training in those situations, what's that setup like? Are you working with more people, obviously trainers and your nutritionists, physios, all that jazz, but other people almost as part of this team?
Yeah, so everyone...
Does that make it better, like easier on the mind, or is it actually competition because you're like, oh, I need to keep an eye out?
Yeah, no, it does make it better. You know, I was at the time training with Jay Jones and Bianca Walkden. Jay just went to the Olympics now, and Bianca was over there commentating. But to be around an Olympian or Olympians, that within itself was like, I was wowed. But I knew that what I do was good enough to be there. I don't think like then I had a dip in my self-belief when I was at the GB Taekwondo. I think that kind of came after.
Sure.
But yeah.
Post-injury.
Yeah.
So let's touch on that then, injury-wise, because it's so difficult because there is literally nothing you can do, but you have to look after that in terms of mindset. So coming back from an injury. So can you talk to me about, when you're at your lowest, what were your thoughts?
That I didn't want to fight anymore, didn't want to compete anymore. But I feel like for me, sport and training is all I know. And so when I did have that injury, I just thought, what on earth am I going to do now? And I did spiral a little bit, but more just negative towards work, my purpose, and just kind of forgetting everything that I would want to do, until it started to get better and I started working and then found boxing.
Yeah. How do you, when things are spiraling, and it sounds like, timing was a natural healer as well, but how do you kind of rein things in? How do you bring the mindset back? How can one bring the mindset back?
I think at the time, I can't even think back to the time.
That's a good thing.
I think now, I can speak on now, is more the support I have from my friends.
Support network.
Yeah. Mine is very strong. And that helps me a lot even till this day. And yeah, my family for sure.
Is that one of the ways you switch off then? Because being a professional boxer, that is your job, that is your life. And as you say, you get up in the morning with the purpose of training, you get home with the purpose of training, but you need to switch off.
Yeah.
You know, boxing can't be through and through. So what else do you do to kind of step away from the boxing world?
Yeah, I'm quite a chill person, I think. Like, I like to travel. I like to travel and just chill out, like go for dinners, meet my friends, just little things like that, really, and just kind of have a good balance rather than just be boxing, training. And being focused is always in my mind. I'm never not focused, but I do believe the importance of having a balance rather than just having tunnel vision on one thing. I think having a balance within the sport and for your life is very important.
Definitely. When you went pro in boxing, and you had this relationship with O2 from working at the store, but then how in conversation were they with you and you with them when you said, I'm like, or when the pro came around? Because you're still working with them now, which is awesome.
So I remember I was going to this other gym in North London, and I would just turn up to the gym and cry because I was just so exhausted. So it was crying from exhaustion of working, because I would have to open the shop, shut the shop, couldn't eat because I'd have to go straight from the shop to the gym. And that was tough. Like, I was so good at my job. Find it hard to delegate.
Yeah.
So I feel like I did
You want to do
everything.
it all.
But I did enjoy my job, but I knew that that's not where I wanted to be. I was more than that for in sport, and I wanted to be in sport. And I remember at the gym, my coach and I were just talking, and he was like, "Oh, just get them to message them to sponsor you." So I just did all the homework I could to find the correct person to email, and I just sent this long email, and I managed to get a call with the head of sponsorship.
Amazing.
And it didn't really go the way I wanted it to at the time. So I'd got back in my notepad, started writing down, and then knew that it was going to happen. And then, then they accepted, and then it was a 2-year deal, and we've just re-signed for another 2 years.
Awesome. It's so cool. I think you clearly just kind of had a goal, as you say, and focused on it. And then after that initial call, I imagine when things you don't hear go the right way, you go, right, what will make it go the right way? And then it's these few points, get them up, back in line, get back in touch with the person and go.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people will be like, I need this, me, whereas I kind of...
What can I give you?
Looked at it as in, for me, but also for your business, and how can we work together? And I think it's been a brilliant partnership ever since.
Yeah, it's great. I really love it. Looking at sponsorship in boxing then, and as boxing has grown enormously and in many different areas, sponsorship is an interesting one. Do you think it's easier now to survive as a professional boxer, or more difficult because of, yes, there's this sponsorship opportunities, but then on the other side, it's such a saturated world with how many boxers are coming through and indeed want to be professional. So what does that look like? Yeah,
I think as a female boxer, like I wouldn't have been able to quit my job if I didn't have the sponsorship from O2. I would have had to work for a bit longer to be in a comfortable position to do so. But I think there is so many boxers out there that are after sponsorship. It's where do these businesses, not draw the line, but how many are there that are going to keep sponsoring people? But I think sponsorship for a female athlete is imperative, depending on what you want to do and the goals that you have. So for me, it's important because I have so many goals that I want to do in my life and within boxing, and to have a better life and for my freedom.
For sure. On the back of that then, what advice would you give to young women coming up in any sport who are looking to get into professional sport?
I would say building a brand is super important, and kind of knowing what you want, and there's no umming and ahhing, and there's no taking no for an answer. Have a plan, have goals, write that down, look at it, and then reach out to who you need to reach to, because that will help in the sport that you go into, if that makes sense. And building your brand, because you are the athlete, but you're also an individual, and they go hand in hand, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's so transferable to any line of work. I think goal setting is so important. What about you then, in terms of, your goals? What does the future look like? Where are we positioned? I say that with the publicist in the room. So I don't know what we can and can't say. But where are we?
Yeah, so fight-wise, I don't know what's happening next. Still in the unknown, and the unknown is what I used to not like. I used to struggle being in the unknown, whereas now I love being in the unknown, not knowing what's going to happen next. But career-wise, like, I do believe, and I know I will become the undisputed champion in my weight division, regardless of having that defeat. I know I can get there. And in life, like, I want to be able to kind of build a community of not just young people. I feel like a lot of people always go for young, but just anyone that needs help with what they want to do. And I just feel like a story or a few words can be so transferable to people that they may remember a piece of advice or something that will help them propel them into anything that they want to do. I just think being able to help someone just really, don't know, just does something to you.
Does it? It helps you, because as you said before, it's, you do it for yourself, but actually having this other side of it, it's like, and you don't want to put the pressure on yourself of saying you don't want to let them down, but it almost makes it even more worth it when success comes. And
I think, like, just little things. I love talking, so anything that I can do that involves speaking. And then just like sport modeling side of things, like I love doing campaigns and shoots and things like that. So that's another field that I want to get into in time.
Awesome. I've really enjoyed chatting. Now, I ask this question to everybody. What does the word headstrong mean to you?
Headstrong means to me that anything that you go through in life, just try and have a strong mind about it, and keep that strong head. And when you need help or advice, it is okay to come out of being headstrong, but always put the headstrong back on to get you through life.
Love it. Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming in and chatting. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope the next fight is an absolute winner.
It will be.
Love it. Awesome.
Thank you.
Happy days. There we go. Thank you.
No problem. Is that all right?